Delaney, I want to get back to you, then I'm going to get to Jacqueline. Tragically, Long Beach is still recovering from another teen suicide. What was the reaction that you can recall at the end of last school season when a high school student, I think he was a senior at Long Beach High School, took his own life last year? So this is the second teen suicide in Long Beach in a very short time. So Delaney, what was that situation like?
It's the third. My son Daniel.
Oh, what?
My son Daniel died in December.
Oh, okay.
This is the third.
Well, my sister's friends there, she was a junior at that time, and a lot of people were grieving it. And I didn't go at the high school at the time, but I don't think they had anything for him. They didn't have an assembly, they didn't have an announcement, a silence, and I didn't even know anything about your son. And I feel like everyone should be told about it, everyone should know what's happening in their town, everyone should know why it's happening, and there should be like a mourning at the school for each student, like a tree, at least plant a tree for the student, because everyone deserves something. No matter how you pass away, you just, like, everyone deserves a moment of silence and acknowledgement.
Yeah, I remember reading on Facebook, he was the class president, Sebastian Vidal, and he was devastated. I remember reading his posts. He said, Danny was such a good boy. He was so well liked. He was devastated by Daniel's loss. I still remember that. And that's a picture of Daniel?
Yeah, this is a picture of my son Daniel Briglio. This was one of his graduation photos. So I just wanted to bring a picture of Danny. And that's very kind of you to say that about Sebastian. I very much appreciate it. It was very upsetting the day my son got back. Should have gone back to school. Nothing was said. I never got a reach out from the school. I implored them at graduation to do a moment of silence, and I asked them for a posthumous diploma. Not that he was going to go for a job, obviously. He had a 98 average, and he had all his credits, and I just wanted to make it, for
Well, I'm glad we can pay tribute to him tonight.
Yeah, he was a doll. So let me ask Grace to talk a little bit about her experience. Go ahead.
Oh, what do you want to know?
First of all, what was your relationship with Daniel like, and what kind of a special person was he?
He was my boyfriend at the time, and I feel comfortable saying that I was the closest person to him at the time. And I wasn't a stranger to his depression, but it was such like a sudden time because we all thought it was getting a lot better, but it was just really sudden. And the day I went back to school, that Monday, no one really talked to me. They kind of just stared at me in the hallway. None of my teachers said anything to me. I didn't get any sort of like condolence except for one of my guidance counselors. And even he didn't know what to do. He's like, if you need to, you can just sit in my office, but I have work to do.
So, since December, we've lost Daniel Riglio and Brandon Carr, two young men with their whole life ahead of them in Long Beach. This is why we're devoting so much time to this, because talking about two young men who had their whole life ahead of them, that they felt that there was no other alternative than to take their own life. And Jacqueline, let's talk about this. Talk saves lives.
Yes.
And and also talk about your foundation.
Alrighty. Well, my son was a very empathic, very giving person, and he did write a journal. In his journal, he said he had this little encounter with his younger self. So he talked to his younger self in a dream, and he recorded the dream, and he said to his younger self, I know it's going to be hard for you, but that when we recover, we're going to do something really great with our life. He said, so be brave and stick it out, and we'll be able to help a lot of people. But unfortunately, like other physical diseases, it's tough. The mental illness, physical illness, my son did not recover. So we made this Daniel's Dream Foundation for him. This is a tattoo that he had made for himself. He designed, and it was his dream that he would do something great. And so we're going to try to do something great for him. We're joining with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in October, which is a premier, suicide prevention and advocacy group in Manhattan, for a walk. We're hoping to do other things.
We'll help promote it.
Yeah, but my son Daniel really understood. He had what we call an inner subjectivity. He understood that he was ill, and he worked doggedly. He had 2 full-time jobs. I always tell people, he was a student and he was a full-time mental health consumer. He had to go to therapy. We had we had first, second, third, fourth, fifth opinions, and he worked diligently. He took every medication. I think Grace would agree. He tried very hard to, overcome his illness. But there are things that just we can't come back from. So Talk Save Lives really means, we have to start to really talk about, suicide. We have to start to look at the factors involved with suicide. They're not just at school. They're not just, mental, the mood. They have to do with your behavior, hereditary factors. My son had 2 suicides in his father's family, a grandparent and a great-grandparent. So that put him at a much higher risk. I told every doctor we ever went to that he had genetic factors predisposing him to mental illness. So, knowing that health factors, environmental factors, historical factors, if you're being abused or you were abused, if there's a history of child abuse, these things all, add into, a witch's brew that can bring somebody to the brink of not coming back. In terms of my own spirituality, I have to believe that my son is in a better place. I don't like it. I may look like I'm okay, but, I ride the boardwalk with my rosary beads. I run around like, I buy masses at all different churches. I happen to be Catholic, so they don't think I'm like overloading at any one church. And that's just my own way of coping. Kids, really need to learn coping skills. They need to learn acceptance. They need to learn that if they feel depressed or lonely, that there's a safe place or a safe person, and that really doesn't exist. I think some of us can agree that there are just things. There's a lot of other things that happen in a school that take administrators and social workers, counselors, and psychologists away, from the silent ones, the quiet ones. My son didn't want to bother anybody. He wasn't having a fit or beating anybody up or taking drugs. He had a 98 average. He was rejected for an IEP because the only problem he had was psychological and emotional. He was too bright. And they knew he had parents who would get him treatments, which we fastidiously did. But still, if you're in a school and you don't feel like loved or, and as I said, I have to be honest, and I will speak about the district. I reached out to multiple school board members multiple times for a moment of silence, at least at graduation, and they didn't even respond to my texts. The superintendent flat out said no. I had other people, some of my friends called, and they said that they flat out said the family doesn't want a moment of silence, which is absolutely not true. And I think, Grace, can you just speak to the fact that you were waiting?
Yeah, I was at graduation because I had a few friends graduating as well, but I was just waiting for the moment of silence because I thought they'd at least do that, like 6 months later, like it's the least you can do. But there wasn't anything, and I just had to go home that day really upset with like the school district I'm in, because they won't do anything. They're afraid about this contagion effect that will, yeah. They think that it'll like trigger other people if they talk about it, one individual person that did it, but I feel like it's the complete opposite, because it'll just feed their anxiety about no one will miss me if I'm gone, you know?
And one thing